Hello and welcome to the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachie Avil, joined by Jacob Stevens. Jacob, Happy New Year. We're sitting here on January 1st. A couple of drama-filled games in the A-League over the past 48 hours to get through. Today, just the two of us. How was your New Year's Eve? Did you watch the fireworks? You make it to 12 o'clock?
Well, I went to the cricket, so that was good fun. Strikers managed to get a nice win. First New Year's Eve win for the Strikers in 6 years, which is good. I don't want, I think it's the first time I've attended in probably about the same length of time, so clearly it's all me.
So you're the lucky charm.
Yep. Clearly. But no, that was good fun, and then got home and I think I was probably awake at midnight, but I was in bed firmly. I was pretty tired and wrecked, so yeah.
They scheduled that game a little bit later, right? So they kind of allow you to go on into the fireworks in the city if you want to.
That's the intention. But then, the Heat did their best to try and end it early. They were like 7 for 70 at one point, and we were like, it's not even going to make 9 o'clock at this rate. But no, it was good fun, a good night out as always. The cricket's a great way to spend New Year's Eve. So
yes, well, unfortunately, the people I was spending New Year's Eve with were very much let's put the cricket on the telly rather than let's put the football on the telly, which I was desperate to do because it was a cracking game between the Raw and the Mariners up there for the traditional New Year's Eve game. But that's not where the headlines were at on Thursday morning, Jacob. Michael Valkanis, I don't even really know where to start. I think I'm just going to go chronologically because it feels like the best way to kind of get a grip of what else has gone on. So as a lot of Brisbane games have been so far this season, which is not a bad thing, Michael, the games have been full of fire, full of passion. There's been tension in them, which has made them exciting games. And I'm sure it's great to see for Brisbane Raw supporters as well. Valkanis gets his yellow card right towards the end of the first half. And the first yellow card, whatever he said, who knows? I don't think that's really been tidied up, but he's done something to attract the attention of Alex King, who is the referee for this game, comes over and Valkanis gives, in my opinion, quite a petulant, sarcastic clap to the awarding of his yellow card. And for me, very rightly gets doubled up and sent to the stands and does the whole, what, you're giving me a second yellow. And I think, you can probably hear it in the tone of how I'm addressing this, Jacob, but I feel for most of the season, Valkanis has been towing the line well of showing his passion for his club, which is well entitled and should be encouraged to do, but flirting with that idea of just being a bit unreasonable, I think. And for me, and I think a lot of people as well, I was looking at some comment sections in Brisbane Raw fan groups as well on Facebook, and I think that line did get crossed for a lot of people last night. And the yellow card is one thing. Then there's this halftime bust up in the tunnel that Warren Moon brought up post game on the Paramount Plus broadcast, and there's still not a whole lot of detail. The whole headline that you've probably read is that police were involved to separate something that happened in between the two clubs and staff members in particular as well, not necessarily players, I think is kind of where we've been going with this. I think the line on police has been over-exaggerated slightly. Police are always at football games as a matter of security protocol, and I don't think there's any suggestion that there was a physical confrontation that had to be, separated, have people separated, or the police actually had to interject physically in anything. I think that just police were there is kind of all we really know for sure. Warren Moon, as I said, goes on after the game and says what he saw was disgraceful. Brisbane Raw has since put out a statement on Thursday condemning that statement, saying that it was inappropriate, irresponsible and unsupported by any facts. And then, I guess it's just keep blowing up, right? And then we have some quotes from Valkanis in his press conference after the game, which he did do despite being sent off. And he goes on again, Jacob, about, my team gets criticised for going direct when others don't get direct. It doesn't get mentioned. And a lot of people are upset that the Brisbane Raw are back up there. And on the yellow card as well, he posited the idea that maybe it was just a good moment for the referee maybe as the referee's union representative on that night, just to shut him up, given what he said about VAR in the last couple of weeks. And I don't know. I really feel like this one was probably a step too far. I don't think a lot of the things that he says, I don't know, I'm finding it hard to describe it, but I just think, as I put forward earlier, that line between the passion and being reasonable, I just feel like he's gone the wrong side of it to end off 2025.
Yeah, I'm firmly on the same page as you with that. It just, again, I've been pretty staunchly defensive of Brisbane Roar so far this season. I really like what they've done. I think they're playing good football, getting good results, and I enjoy what Valkanis has been able to bring to that club. And I really like as well, kind of when you've got those teams that can turn heel and become the villain, right? And kind of just bring something different to the league. It's all well and good to just have a bunch of teams that just kind of are there to play football, but those that really take it seriously and push for something more, I think it's awesome to see. And, sometimes that kind of stray into them kind of, being perpetuated as a villain side, but I think Brisbane Roar have done a good job to embrace it, and it makes their fixtures a lot more exciting to watch. But I do agree. I think that it has kind of crossed a line now where, like, you can't really be massively defensive of everything that happened, and it's not like this should come as a surprise either, right? I mean, obviously, like you said, Valkanis has been towing the line all season, but we've seen really just a big clampdown on dissent from the benches, from coaching staff, this season anyway, or at least it seems like we've seen a lot more of it this season. I don't know if it's a directive that's come from somebody like John Moss, maybe in his new role at kind of overseeing things and how games are going to be officiated, but I feel like we've seen, at least at just Adelaide home games, we've seen half the Jets bench carded, we've seen Alan Stajic carded, we've seen Ed and Andrioli carded, we've seen Valkanis week in, week out, constantly, having a go at the fourth official, and there's always conversations, and he's now been sent off, and it just feels like we're seeing a lot more of kind of that responsibility for coaches to make sure they're behaving themselves on the sideline actually being taken seriously by the officiating teams. So it can't be too surprising from Valkanis' perspective to have been sent off in that situation. Like you said, we don't know what was said in that first instance, but I think the fact that it's not really been brought up as I shouldn't have even been carded in the first place suggests that it was probably pretty well warranted. And then the sarcastic clapping and all of that, I think it's pretty fair enough reason to go. Doesn't help that he's obviously been in the media recently, kind of pushing back against a lot of the refereeing decisions in the last few weeks. That's not been helpful perhaps, but I don't think that you can be massively surprised based on his actions that he ended up sent off in this game. And let's not forget as well, Valkanis is a coach who has priors. Like, he's done this before where he's had himself sent off as a coach. I remember it happening when he was at Adelaide United. And it's just like, at some point as a coach, you've got to take responsibility for your own actions, I think. And, that's not to say that he hasn't necessarily done that here, but it can't be too surprising, but I think it has crossed a line now where these kind of actions, you've got to reevaluate what it's actually doing, right? It is not as big a benefit perhaps to the club as you'd want, and it's kind of making you look a little bit silly.
Yeah, I think I really do believe that it is making him look a little bit silly, and particularly some of the comments, and he's not the only coach to fall into this trap, but when coaches talk about VAR, and I have some empathy for the fact that it's usually after a game. It's very raw. It's very emotional, and you're looking for explanations when maybe when your heart rate's up, when your passion is elevated that you can't quite see. But the explanations for VAR exist, and we see them make calls in press conferences. Valkanis did this, talking. It doesn't VAR doesn't work for Brisbane. I don't know if there's anyone up there. Mark Milligan did it. I think it was last week as well, asking for clarity around the use of VAR, and he referenced the free kick that was overturned against them. I think it was round one actually in the F3.
Yeah.
But the answers to these questions are all there if you want them to be explained, right? Like that free kick against the Jets was triggered by a review for a red card or a penalty, something that is in the window or the scope of VAR. And then once that review is triggered, the referee has the jurisdiction to amend whatever in that play that he wants. That is within the rules. There is no need for clarity there. They are operating within the rules of VAR. And Valkanis has done that as well. And I think it is making him look a little bit silly because there are examples there. And credit to Ben Homer as well, who was asking the questions in the post-match press conference. He responded to one of the points and he said, well, Michael, you say that all these people are critical of, Brisbane's physicality and people don't want them up there. I don't know who he's actually listening to that is making these points. It's been talked about for sure. And I think I wouldn't say, definitely the conversations that we've had and at least the ones that I listen to and read as well, Jacob, I don't think people, in fact, I'd actually lean the other way and say people are appreciating a little bit of breath of fresh air and saying, okay, this is different. You're putting your heart on the sleeve, you're pressing well, and you're being physical, and that's good. I actually think it's been more positive than negative.
Especially within Brisbane, right? I mean, you look at their supporters this season, and it seems like just about every single one of them has really bought into it. So, yeah, I definitely agree. Like, it feels like this idea that they have been criticised heavily throughout the season. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where it's coming from because, like you said, a lot of the discussion about it has been almost as Valkanis first said, right? Where it's it's not a bad thing that they're a physical team, right? And like you said, that's what it seems to be. The conversation is a lot of the time is yeah, okay, they might be physical, but they're playing good football. They're doing it the right way. They're not crossing the line, etc., etc. So yeah, it seems like almost they've tried to fabricate something that isn't necessarily quite there. But now it's gotten to a point where those conversations are going to start happening because of particularly the actions of I think, kind of Valkanis and the team in this game. So it's almost like they're falling victim to their own perception of what they thought other people thought they were like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And obviously coaches do this all the time in terms of trying to create that siege mentality, us against them. But it is verging on that point of just being a little bit out of touch with what's actually going on. And as soon as that story doesn't become as believable anymore, then its effectiveness will wear off in the football match as well. So I think there needs to be caution for sure. Sorry, I'm just seeing a notification that popped up. We're right off full time of the Wanderers game, and I saw a notification on Twitter with Alan Stadgick in a big alarm. He hasn't been sacked. I thought that's what it might have been. But look, I think the other disappointing thing about this whole story is we had a cracking game of football in front of us. Vidic with the late winner. Jay O'Shea, what a class player he's been for Brisbane for such a long period of time. Shows up in the big moment and plays an inch perfect delivery into the box for Vidic to just tap home. And it's 3 points and they shoot up, I think, equal second on the ladder, given that Sydney are a game behind. And they're playing some really good football and getting wins. And the thing I do love about Valkanis is that he simplifies it into that winning formula. The part of the press conference I loved, you have the passes, you have the possession. Well, did you win the game? That's what matters. Did you win the game? Did you get 3 points? And I think that is something that Brisbane fans are absolutely responding to. And they have a really good football team there, Jack.
Yeah, spot on. They've just boiled it down to the simple thing. It's something that, different sport, but when I played cricket, our coaches were always saying, just do the basics right and you'll win 90% of your games, right? And then it's only in 10% of the games where you actually need to go above and beyond to win it. And it's the same thing in basically any sport, and especially in football. If you just do the basic things right and you play fundamentally good football, you're going to get results more often than not. And that was the case here. And like you said, it's those players, those Jay O'Shea's, just super reliable. How good has Vidic been as well for them? He's been a great signing. It's just, it feels like they've kind of got things together. And there's word going around as well, I've heard, that there could be a bit more investment in the squad coming in January as well, which is a terrifying proposition for the rest of the league if true. Because a further improved Brisbane Roar squad would be very, very dangerous. But yeah, they're a great football team. Like I've said, all season long, they're playing good football, getting good results. And they're really definitely going to be up there at the pointy end of the season. It's just is this media narrative now that we've seen it kind of bring down teams in the past where that plays into what's going on the field. And that's the one thing this Brisbane team really needs to avoid, because it's killed them the last couple of seasons where it's just been constant off-field drama, and that's affected their performances on the pitch as well. Whereas this season it feels like maybe they're going to turn the tides, but now they're facing that kind of fight back, that pushback again, where there's these negative stories going around, and how's that going to hurt them? But no, you're right. They're a great football team, great football, good results. there's not much to hate about them, really, to be honest. Like that, and that's the thing, and that's what I was saying earlier. It feels like this kind of idea that people hating the Brisbane Roar this season is coming out of nowhere. You can, dislike them from the perspective of, oh great, Brisbane Roar are good again. Like we've seen this story before, but I don't think there's anything necessarily to hate about the way they've gone about it. They've just been a really good football team doing the basics well. And for all the criticism that teams get when they try and do things that are way too complicated and it doesn't work out and things like that, Brisbane have done the basics well, got the results. They deserve the plaudits for that. So yeah, I definitely agree that they're a really solid football team. So it's a bit of a shame that there are these kind of stories now starting to build up around them that are kind of detracting from their performances on the pitch.
All right, still a holding pattern for the Mariners as well. They've got a big month coming up when the registration window opens. I believe it's the 14th of January. I had a quick peek at the domestic calendar just before we hopped on. So still 2 weeks. There's free agency, free agent situations where players can be registered at any time. But I believe if they're coming from, I don't know. I don't want to say too much because I probably could be wrong, but I believe 14th of January is when some players are allowed to come into teams and stuff like that. Let's go to New Year's Day. The box office Jets, Jacob, are back. The 20 minutes, box office indeed, to start the game. The Jets managed to get themselves 2-1 up. The best goal of the game was definitely Jesse Randall's free kick. Just managed to sneak it in. You see that tried like occasionally where the goalkeeper's a little bit too far off his line one way or the other. Maybe I can just sneak it in, in the near post. But I can't remember a time where it was pulled off to such precision, probably at that angle as well from Jesse Randall.
It's been a few years since we've seen one probably even hit the target like that. You occasionally see them kind of hit the outside of the post or whatever, and everyone goes, "Oh, that was close." And the keeper gets a bit of a scare, but bit of a fumble, it must be said, by Delianov. The choice to have just a one-man wall there as well is interesting. It really opens up that possibility for Auckland to play it direct. But, Auckland may have had the best goal of the game, but the Jets played astonishingly well. Down to 10 men early as well. They get that early red card. And to be honest, I think it might have been a little bit of a harsh red card. I understand.
Really?
I understand it's the whole last man thing, and, he's strong goal, but he's at the halfway line. And
it's a yellow card, though, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, yellow. But I think
because it was a double. It was a double.
Was it a double yellow? I thought it was a straight red. Yep. Okay, so then ignore that. That was the right call. I thought it was a straight red, and I thought that's a bit harsh. But no, okay, yeah, double yellow, that's fine. But yeah, they played exceptionally well with only 10 men. I mean, Auckland really should have capitalised more than they did. I thought their attacking game plan was pretty meek. They just had a lot of the ball and just dinky little crosses in, and I feel like we've seen that a lot from teams this season when they're trying to come back against 10 men. It's been just really poorly executed attacking play, and I understand it's difficult to kind of beat a low block team, especially when they realise they're down a player. They're just going to send everybody back and just play super defensive and try and hit on the counter like the Jets did. But Auckland, you're putting your name in the hat to be one of the best teams in the league every season. You should be getting results against teams with 10 men, and yet they just couldn't really generate anything of any note. I mean, Delianov, after a little bit of a blunder for that first goal, I think he actually had a solid game after that. Didn't really make too many mistakes. The Jets defended well, and like I said, Auckland couldn't really create much. So it's a credit to the way the Jets played and the way they defended, and then the ability at the end as well to go and get that goal on the break. Really good work from Lachie Rose to win the ball, play it off, and then make that run. Stay just onside. It was a close one. I think he was probably only a few millimeters behind the ball, but it is what it is. They get the goal, and it was another great result. The Jets beat Auckland in Auckland again. Saw Chris in our group chat saying that the Jets are going to petition to have all their home games played in New Zealand from now on. Yeah. So they've got that advantage because they played well there this season. But no, another good result for the Jets, and again, kind of showing their ceiling, right? As they can beat any team in this league comfortably on their day. Their problem is finding that consistency, and again, it's showing those kind of failings of the Auckland side this season that weren't present last season, where it just feels like they're kind of lacking I don't know quite what, but it feels like they're not firing on all cylinders so far this season. And, there's been a couple of injuries, some players moving around and things like that, but it's not quite as clinical as it was for Auckland last season. Maybe it's just that kind of sophomore slump. They're coming back to a bit of a regression to the mean. They're fully embedded in the A-League now. But yeah, a great performance from the Jets, a great game of football. And, that puts the Jets now up into the 6 as well. So it's just making things even more exciting in the ladder prospects.
100%. Yeah, I'm fully on board with the idea that Auckland are kind of just coming back to everyone's level a little bit after what was, an incredible inaugural season for them last time out. So it's going to be fascinating because they haven't had a sustained poor run of form. Still, I don't think you can say. Like, they've had little ups and downs here and there, but they've never been significantly challenged with a long run of losses or not winning a game, and they have to bounce back for it. So that test is going to come for them. And I think as long as they pass that test well, they'll finish top 4 and they'll play finals football and they'll have a crack at the toilet seat towards the end of the year. And then on the Jets, I actually found this really reassuring. And, football players say it all the time. When a team, especially when they're ahead, goes down to 10 men, it's not as easy as people think to go and score a goal and put on the pressure. And, one of the things that the Jets have been, questioned about is how they're conceding goals. And, the way this game panned out didn't really allow them to concede the goals in the manner that they usually do. So they were forced to go about their football in a different way. And being up so early in the game and then, having to go back and play in that really gritty defensive style just to get the job done is something we haven't really seen from them. So not necessarily obviously anything tactical, but hopefully they can take that mentality and that kind of grit and move it forward.
It's a case of we can win even when we aren't allowed to play our style of football, right? If we do just have to shore things up and, like you said, kind of play gritty football, we can still get that result and arguably look better than in most games they have done this season as well, which is quite funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're down a player and you have a goal lead, all of a sudden, everything you do becomes not conceding a goal, and you're so focused on that achievement until, Michael Vowd comes up for a corner and the break's on and Mark Natter plays, I think, a really underrated actually ball because you just have to get it out and around, and he did exactly what he needed to do. But, 90% of the time, you're just focused on that defensive goal. So Mike Milligan, if he can kind of copy and paste that mindset and that determination into his team for the next coming weeks, then when you're passing the ball around the back, you still have that focus in your mind that you can't give it away here because you have to protect that. I know it wasn't a clean sheet, but you have to protect your goal and protect your goalkeeper, especially because Delianov is not having the best season at the moment. That's going to be invaluable, I think. So I'm looking forward to see where they bring up in the next, it's probably 5 or 6 days, isn't it? I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is. It keeps changing on me so quick, it feels like.
They play City on the 11th.
Okay, very good. Oh, okay, so it is over a week, so they do have a little bit of time.
It's a bit of a break for them.
There you go. And then the other game, Jacob, MacArthur won over the Western Sydney Wanderers 0. This is turning into a long streak now without wins for the Wanderers. It just feels like, and this is with a lot of the Wanderers games over the past month or so, it could have turned out so differently. Like they had large spells, especially in that second half where they were the dominant team, right?
100%.
But MacArthur, it actually feels odd because it feels at ends with their not style, their kind of situation as a club being so fresh, being so new, but their team is very experienced. The signings that they've made, they've picked good experienced players from around the league. And it feels like when they go 1-0 up in a situation like that, they know how to get the job done, which is such a useful talent to have in a team. So when you get that 1-0 goal like they did in this game, they were just able to close it out.
Yeah, and they'll be pretty happy, I'm sure, that it didn't end up in a shootout like it was last time out against the Jets, 5-4, that they were able to just only need the one goal this time. And it kind of is a quintessential, when I envision a MacArthur win, this is the kind of thing that I imagine, right? Like a well-worked goal, fantastic strike by Rafa Duran as well. Like that was a tremendous hit. And then just able to just kind of see it out. Not let the dominant team really do much with the ball, a bit like the Jets, and see the game out. And when you've got somebody, like Philip Curto as well. I mean, we're always talking about how great he is for the team and how amazing he's been over the years, but he's kind of had an up and down season, so it's great to see him get another clean sheet. And yeah, like you said, I think it just goes to their recruitment of, you've got these mature players with a lot of experience. They're going to be able to put in these mature performances, not make mistakes, when you've only got a 1 goal lead, and just keep things clean, efficient, and get the job done. Yes, okay, it's against a really struggling Wanderers side who have looked awful so far this season, so a lot of clubs would probably want more than a 1-0 win against them, but a win is still a win, right? And for Macarthur as well, where they're at, they'll be more than happy. I think they're up in 4th now, maybe, something like that, 4th or 5th. So, they're doing very, very well for themselves. Obviously, with Asian commitments as well, that's kind of slowed down for them at the moment. But yeah, they're doing a stellar job this season, and I think it's exactly right. It goes to their recruitment in the off season, where they've really built a squad that is capable of winning, that is capable of grinding out these kind of results, having sustained runs of form, but that also has the depth where if players need to move in and out of the squad because of extra fixtures or whatnot, they're able to do it, and it doesn't affect their performances too much. So they've done a really, really good job so far, I think, this season, and credit as well to Mile Stejovski for setting them up for success in that way, in the way that they're playing football. I think it really suits the profile of players that they've got. They're able to use those central midfielders. I thought Liam Rose had a fantastic game as well, to progress the ball and just look really threatening. So yeah, it's just all around a really well run outfit this season, and they're kind of what I was expecting City to be. City haven't been so much, and yeah, they've smashed it out of the park so far.
Yeah, and Liam Rose, I think he was the player of the match in this one. He deserves a lot of credit for the whole season, because of what they've done. And you talk about rotation as well. This is a great example with Luke Bratton having been suspended for this game, and Rose's role changed a little bit in this one. But I think everyone looked at the midfield three of Bratton, Caceres, and Rose, and you think, oh, you've got two, class, really experienced A-League players in Caceres and Bratton. But there's been many games this season where Rose has been the better of those three. Obviously, Bratton gets on the ball a lot and he plays that kind of quarterback role. But Rose has been exceptional moving forward. And sometimes if, Caceres is getting a little bit too much attention, then he's able to kind of just sneak in there and go under the radar.
And that's exactly it, right? When you've got those two other quality players beside you, they're more often than not going to be taking that extra attention from the opposition's defensive setup, which allows that third player to have a bit more freedom. And when it's somebody like Liam Rose, as it was today, as it has kind of been all season long, it gives them extra space, extra time to be able to find those passes and progress the ball better. So it's just, it goes to, again, that recruitment of, they've done a very good job in identifying where they can create these holes by having quality players taking up a lot of the attention. It's the same way that it works, right? When you've got, a big name striker or whatever, and he's always getting double teamed. Well, that's going to leave space somewhere else for a winger or a number 10, right? It's the same thing happens in the midfield. So, just been tremendous to watch MacArthur this season. Liam Rose getting his flowers as well. Pun not intended. But just like I said, a really well-run football club at the moment.
Yeah, and of course they've got Mitch Duke to come in the next couple of weeks as well. New signing, massive signing. So good. He'll be starting straight away. And I think one of Stejovski's really good assets as a coach is that he doesn't get wedded to a system, and not in the way that people usually mean when I say that, in that, you look at your opposition and you think, okay, this is a weakness, and then you do this specifically in your lineup to try and target that weakness. But I think what Stejovski does is he's adept at finding what works best for his team, like specifically his team, through the ebbs and flows. We've seen him move between a back three and a back four, where we've seen him play two up top with G and Sawyer, and now that Duke is there as well, there's going to be a new element at play. So it's not exactly clear how Stejovski will get the best out of that combination of players, but I think it is clear that Stejovski has the ability to figure it out if you give him a month or two, right? So
a little bit of versatility.
Yeah, it's not that week to week change of adapting to the opposition, but it's running those experiments and figuring out how your team actually best works together, and not, picking a system at the start of the season and being wedded to that and just playing it all the way through, because that's the way we've done things. I think that's one of Mile's really good assets as a coach. The Bulls have their ACL2 draw as well. That took place a couple of days ago. MacArthur will play Bangkok United in the round of 16. Those games are scheduled for early February. This is the same team that Sydney FC played in their round of 16 clash in the ACL2 last season. Sydney were obviously victorious in that game. So hopefully that's a good omen of things to come for the Bulls. And the rest of the group as well, or draw, I should say, because this has essentially mapped the path all the way to the final. Has been fairly positive. I don't know if there's too many other matchups that could have gone better for them. So the winner of that Bulls Bangkok matchup will play the winner of Kong An Hanoi. So obviously second place in the Bulls group, Stefan Mork over in Vietnam, and Tampines Rovers, I believe is the correct pronunciation. Thank you for whoever corrected me on the socials the other day. But that is a relatively good draw.
That's very
obviously,
good, yeah.
You're your top team in your group playing a second, so we should expect MacArthur to be the favourites, and then you're playing a team you've already beaten in the groups as well, or someone who beat them. So Gamba Osaka and Pohang Steelers, who are the Japanese and Korean sides, they've drawn each other on the opposite side of the Eastern draw. So one of them is going to knock each other out, and they won't meet the Bulls until the Eastern finals. So obviously there's a long way to go. Anything can happen in Asia, but in terms of a good kind of draw for our Aussie team, it's working out quite well.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's shaping up to kind of echo Sydney FC's run last season. And yeah, MacArthur are really set up nicely here, I think. Bangkok United, you don't want to underestimate them, obviously, but like I said, Sydney got the job done against them. And in terms of, you're not drawing somebody like Pohang or Gamba Osaka. That's huge. Those two teams have, in the past, done a number on Australian clubs. So, being able to just kind of push that engagement a little bit further away and just go, I'm not going to worry about you yet, that's huge. So, no, I mean, it looks like a very favourable draw for the Bulls. And, they've done a fantastic job so far in the ACL2. And, like I said, they've done well in the league. They've done well in Asia. Hopefully they can keep that going, and it would be great to see some more success for Australian teams in Asia. I think, again, like Sydney, there is kind of now an expectation that they can go quite deep in this competition, especially with the way that they've played in the group stage. I don't know. I don't want to say, that the expectation is make the final or anything like that, but, it's definitely...
Play Ronaldo.
Yeah, there's definitely... That's not, beyond the realms of possibility for the Bulls. So if they keep playing the way that they have done, really the sky is the limit for them in this competition. And that's super exciting, not just to have success in Asia, but also obviously for the coefficient, Lachie, your favourite thing in the whole world, and just making Australian football look good on a continental scale again. But no, yeah, they've been tremendous and a great draw for them.
And we obviously love looking forward, and I love, being optimistic about what Australian teams can do in Asia. But I think the beauty of what MacArthur and Melbourne City have proven to us this year is that I think the perception that a lot of people have of Asian competition is these diametrically opposed levels of difficulty, that a game in Asia is either an easy win or a certain loss, and therefore the stakes and the tension is kind of diluted. It's kind of being waved away a little bit. Yes, I think, the Bulls topping their group, they should be the favourites against Bangkok, but only narrow favourites. This is knockout football. Any of these two teams can win. And as much as we want the Australian teams to push on and do well, there's no certainty in it. This is football we're talking about. And I think the ACL2 specifically, Australians should really get on board with, because this kind of traditional bracket style knockout elimination football, play your home and away legs. This is the experience we're getting in here. You have the elite. If Melbourne City get through, then yes, they have a home and away round of 16. But after that, it's the centralised finals in Saudi Arabia. And obviously we're expecting Australian teams to be competitive. But there's Japanese teams, there's Korean teams in here as well, that are also expecting to be competitive. So it's just a fun competition that Australia will be up there. but there's other good teams as well. We can win and we can lose, and I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, and for the football purists, it's a kind of that true Champions League format as well. Like you said, with the elite, you only get the one home and away kind of knockout fixtures before it then becomes the centralized finals. It remains true to Champions League format kind of the whole way through, which is, it just adds that extra little bit of, just fun to it, and you get to see these cool games in sometimes obscure locations, as we saw with the Mariners run a couple of years ago. Obviously it was the AFC Cup then, but similar kind of competition. It's great. And the teams, I mean, you look at some of these teams as well and you go, Al Nassr, like,
yep, that's Ronaldo. That is Ronaldo,
exactly.
People.
It's literally Ronaldo. It's them. You've got Pohang Steelers and Gambaro Saka, who we mentioned. Sepahan as well have been a big name in Asia for a long time. It's just, there's so many really quality teams here that, yes, okay, it's the lesser competition, but it's still going to be extremely difficult and very well fought by everybody involved. So yeah, like I said, that's why I didn't want to say for sure Macarthur are going to win definitely these fixtures against Bangkok, but they are slight favourites heading in, and it is the more favourable draw that they could have gotten. So yeah, look, you can't underestimate anybody that's left in this competition. They managed to get this far, and now it's kind of just that knockout football, and it's what we see in the finals series, and everybody gets around in the A-League. Obviously, is these games just mean more, and we're getting it now as well in Asia. For Macarthur, so it's awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Very keen. So early February for those two legs for the Bulls against Bangkok in the round of 16. Tell you what, though, you brought up the coefficient. It is under threat again from China, because we've got all our good Australian coaches. They've been shipped off to the CSL. We're expecting 4 Australian head coaches to be confirmed in just a matter of days, as you'll be listening to this podcast on release. So we have Kevin Muscat at Shanghai Port. Obviously, there is talk that, potentially what else does he have to prove in China? Could he be going over to Europe in this Chinese off-season, the kind of January period over in Europe? That could still happen. But Ross Aloisi is confirmed to be the head coach at Zhejiang, who definitely played Melbourne City in a Champions League a couple of years ago, I think. Another rumour for him is that David Zrulich will be his assistant as well. So Driller heads overseas. Nick Montgomery, obviously Scott, but has held Australian citizenship for a decade now. He is reportedly on his way to Beijing Guan, who is the team that Macarthur knocked out in the ACL2 this year, but traditionally a heavyweight of Chinese football. And then John Aloisi, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Jacob is also reported, just at the moment, so not confirmed by anyone, but reported to be on his way to Chengdu Rongcheng, who are also an ACL elite team this time. So Matt will tell us that they're kind of at their peak at the moment. They've kind of come up, and this is their kind of time in the sun, and maybe they're not one of those traditional powerhouses, but this is a top flight Chinese league. So my question to you, let's start with the idea of Australian coaches in China overall, because I think, number one, it's an indication of that where the A-League is at the moment, that the Australian coaches have to go somewhere elsewhere in Asia to really get that kind of next level of reputation to then go over into Europe. But it's also a fact that we have a very core group of very trusted coaches over in Asia. We've seen it happen in Japan. Now it's starting to happen in China as well, that the Australian reputation in Asia is definitely increasing.
100%. And I think it's kind of, we've seen how long it's taken for Australian players to be able to kind of not have to have some kind of stepping stone between the A-League and that next big career move. Right now we're starting to see those pathways open up in Europe, and it's been over a number of years of just sustained good players making those moves, having an impact, and being able to kind of build that culture of, actually, maybe we should treat Australian football seriously. Like, now we'll see the same, hopefully, with coaches, where this group now coming through, a lot of very talented coaches right there. And, yes, okay, they're still having to have that stepping stone, but once they move on to bigger and better things, which, like you said, with Kevin Muscat, it almost seems destined to happen at some point. then it starts to become a case of, well, okay, yeah, maybe we need to treat Australian coaches seriously as well. So yeah, it's a little bit annoying that they can't just go straight from the A-League to something massive. But China is a great league. Obviously, it's come down a lot from that peak in the kind of early 2010s where there were just millions being thrown around, almost in a similar way to some of the like Saudi Arabian leagues and things like that. Have been recently, but yeah, that's come down a little bit, but it's still obviously held in very high regard, especially in Asian continental competition. And I think that's the main thing, right, is there is just more opportunity to have that exposure at that level in China than there is in the A-League, right, where the spots are very limited. You've got more teams going to the Champions League Elite and the Champions League 2 from China than you are from Australia, so there's more opportunity there for these coaches to have that chance to coach in those kind of competitions and get that experience under their belt, which is absolutely massive, because there's one thing in coaching just a home and away league season where you're seeing the same opposition, a couple of times every season, and you kind of get to know how things are going. When it comes to this continental competition, especially once you're reaching these knockout stages, you're not always necessarily sure who you're going to be facing next. So just kind of throws that extra little bit of craziness into the preparation stages, which is invaluable for a coach to be able to set teams up kind of week to week, not necessarily knowing what's coming next. But yeah, it's awesome to see. Hopefully it's, maybe this becomes the next hub, right, for Australia. We've kind of seen it recently with like Scotland, has been the spot. Maybe it's going to be China is the next one, right? And it's definitely a good stepping stone. While it's a shame to have, like I said, still have to have these stepping stones, it's there's a lot worse spots there could be in Asia than heading to China. And for just about everyone, for coaches, players, like I said, you're getting those opportunities in continental competition. In the Chinese Super League itself is a very, very high level of competition as well, in terms of just the individual levels of each team. Some really, really strong sides there. So it's a great thing to see. And maybe it's just a phase. Maybe it's just Chinese teams going crazy and just signing Australian coaches because Kevin Muscat's gone back to back or whatever with Shanghai Port, and they're like, oh well, clearly there's something in the water, we'll just do it. But let's take it while it lasts, because it's as well. This is the thing. It's getting these guys jobs now as well. That's the thing. They're not just sitting in limbo anymore, thinking what's the next opportunity. It's, well, now we've got these gigs at really good clubs in a good level in Asia, and that's huge, right? Like John Aloisi isn't just sitting on his hands anymore waiting to see what's going to happen. It's I can take this job that's a step up, that's going to really test me. Of course I'm going to take it. It's from that perspective, it's really good as well.
And I think the other thing it highlights is particularly looking at those Aloisi brothers. So Kev is also obviously won championships in Australia, won championships in Japan, and now won championships in China as well. And Nick Montgomery is a previous A-League winning coach and has been, an assistant under Ange for a little while. But the Aloisi brothers, I think, are an interesting indication of kind of where the A-League is at as well. We were talking about John Aloisi, and obviously in hibernation with Western United, reportedly turned down the Perth job. And then I think I remember saying to you on the podcast probably over a month ago now, for the Melbourne Victory and Western Sydney Wanderers, when those teams were both struggling in that period, and the heat was absolutely on those coaches, and we were talking about whether they should get rid of them or not. One thing I put to you was that you probably have a little phone call or something to someone who works with John Aloisi and say, if we're getting a yes from John Aloisi, then that's probably the deciding factor to whether we want to get rid of our coach or not, because he's probably the only really big coach going around. And I think, on retrospect, it makes a lot of sense that, John is looking for something bigger than that. He's also an A-League champion. He didn't feel like going, and this is a little bit of an indictment on the league, he didn't feel like maybe going to a Melbourne Victory or going to a Western Sydney Wanderers would be a step up for him at the moment. And he wants a bigger leap than that, and he wants to go to China and prove himself elsewhere in Asia. And Ross Aloisi, he spent 3 months at the Brisbane Roar, and he's been working as an assistant under Kev, and now he's already got a CSL head coaching role. Like, he's skipped the A-League. He didn't even think that was worth his time. You know what I mean? So hopefully we get back to a point where these coaches are coming in like Ange and dominating for 3 years and creating legacies at clubs, and then get them moved, right? Because we want to see it happen in Australia as well.
I do think, though, that yes, okay, maybe Ross has like kind of skipped the A League from a head coaching role, but he's been around for a long time as an assistant coach in the league, and he's kind of proven his worth there. John, like you said, he's a champion at Western United. There's not much more he can do here. Maybe Asian success with an Australian club, but he's also seen the reality of competing in Asia as an Australian club and has maybe gone, not worth my time. I'll just go to an Asian club with a bit more money where there's more opportunity for me to do that.
Sorry to interrupt. One thing I've just thought of in my head as well. It's like, you think back to the Graham Arnold, like 16, 17 Sydney team. With the A-League being competitively balanced with its salary cap, it's actually really hard for a coach to just like dominate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna cop losses. It's just the way
things
the league
are going to
is.
equalize out. Yeah.
You can win a grand final off a couple of good games in May, but it's actually really hard to build that to your resume to a point where you say we dominated this year as a team.
Yeah, I mean, look at that Western United team, right? They win the championship, and then it's quite a few years of just pretty mediocre football after that. Everything kind of equalises. We were talking about it before with Auckland, from the highs of last season to just kind of coming down to being just a good team this season. That's kind of the way this league works. So you're spot on that. That's kind of limiting to coaches as well, because they can't necessarily build these great squads that are going to dominate for a long time. It's not necessarily as easy to keep squads intact as well, or at least cores of squads. We're seeing a change to that where more long-term contracts are being handed out, but at least for a long, long time, that's not been the case. And you've seen a lot of chopping and changing where half a squad will be different from one season to the next for a lot of clubs. And that kind of uncertainty from a coaching perspective as well would be an absolute nightmare. But no, I think you're kind of right. Yeah, it's an interesting predicament for a coach where this can be a really great starting spot because you get to work with some incredible young talent, in a league that is relatively equal. So there's always that opportunity for you to take those chances and win games and win a league, right? And really put your name up in lights. But it's that sustained period of success that's very difficult to come by here, which is why making these moves, for Aloisi's, case, right? Like you said, he only spent a few months at the Brisbane Roar before another opportunity came up and he took it, probably because he realised, well, sticking around in Australia is, as a coach, it means you're probably not having a huge amount of success. If I'm getting an opportunity now, I should probably take it, because I might have success this year with the Roar, right? But after that, there's no guarantee that it's going to stick around for any longer, and this is already a good opportunity, so I'll just go for it. So yeah, I think you've kind of, that's an interesting point that I hadn't considered before, that yeah, kind of the way the league is set up here makes it very difficult for coaches to see this as a long-term option, more than it just being a case of having some quick success and showing your credentials as a coach and then quickly moving on to something better.
But and again, the other side of that is that it's good to a point where we have the recognition where you don't have to dominate. That sounds wrong, but like you think of the previous coaches that have come through the A-League and absolutely dominated over a period of time. You've got Ernie Merrick in the early days of the Victory. You've got Graham Arnold from the Mariners to Sydney FC. You've got Tony Popovich across 3 clubs. Obviously not grand final success, but he won a lot of games of football at a very good rate. Ange Postecoglou over in Brisbane Roar. I actually don't even think Kevin Muscat quite slips into that category. He's probably just that one tier down, right? But those coaches, they had to dominate the league for years on end before they got their big moves. And, a bunch of them, again, like Socceroos coaches, and one or two of them probably will be in the future, right? And so it's good. Again, we talk about the reputation of Australian football people growing overseas. This is also definitely an indication that is still happening.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that we did learn that coaches apparently do control, though, Jacob, is whether or not they release players for the under-23 squad. So
this
the Aussie
whole saga has been ridiculous. Can I just say,
it has
straight
been
off
a bit
the bat?
ridiculous.
Oh my goodness!
I'm interested in your opinion on this, actually, because I think my head goes a little bit against the grain on this one. So the under-23s, the Olyroos, I believe as of even today, the players might have left. So over to the Asian Cup in Saudi Arabia, the likes of Geordie Valadon, Ethan Alagic, Nathan Paul, some of the players in this team are very, very central to some of these A-League outfits. But a couple of players who won't be coming, the likes of Max Caputo, Reece Bozanovsky over in Perth, and Anthony Pantasopoulos for the Wanderers, have been denied releases. I'm not going to lead the question anymore, Jacob. What have you made of this whole saga and some of the responses from the football public?
It's been very interesting. I can't remember it being a problem in recent memory, to be perfectly honest with you. It feels like for the most part, clubs have been very, very happy to let players go on international duty and have seen it as that opportunity for them to continue to develop as players, particularly these younger players. It's a great opportunity for them to go and get experience in a different environment and prove themselves. We saw it, obviously, the likes of Alex Badalatu was tremendous with the under 23s at the Asian Cup, and then was able to get his a good move in the A-League and get minutes now with the Jets. That's kind of how clubs have seen it in the past. Is okay, it's an awesome opportunity for our players to really develop. So it is strange, that we're seeing now teams kind of go, and it represents, reflects rather the shift in mentality as well from teams, in that there's more reliance now on younger players than there has been in the past, especially in the core makeup of a lot of the squads, where they are very key players, fundamental to the success of these football teams on the pitch. And honestly, I think the way that I see it is just release the players. Like if it's just a league wide, nobody does it. You've got to all be on the same page, right? And I think that holding out is just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I mean, you think about with the senior squad, with the Socceroos squad, and could you imagine if somebody was held back by their senior club, right? The absolute outroar. If it was a European club, the outroar here would be incredible. Oh, they don't think that Australia is good enough for them to release the player. And it's like, well, we're getting
for a senior game.
Yeah. And it's like now we're getting the same thing here with our junior ranks, where it's, domestic clubs aren't releasing their players for whatever reason, obviously. But yeah, I just think you've all got to be on the same page. You're either all releasing your players or you're all saying, no, it's the middle of the season. This is ridiculous. And, it's certainly hurt more teams than it. Yeah, it certainly hurt some teams more than others. Adelaide have lost 3 starters, Alagic, Jovanovic and Dakuli. Lucky not to lose Panakikianis, and there's been a bit of conversation about what that's all about, because initially people thought they had allowed the other 3 to go but said no to letting Kikianis go because they would then have no defenders whatsoever available, basically, moving forwards. But the club have come out and said no, he wasn't even mentioned, he wasn't even picked at any point. So that seems a little bit harsh because he's been pretty good this season. Wow. But anyway, I think my thing is just all be on the same page, and I'd prefer clubs to just let the players go, to be honest. I think it's a great thing for them, and I think it also, if you're relying on your young players to the extent that losing 1 or 2 of them is going to kill your season, then you've not done a good enough job building your squad and the depth.
Yeah, but I also don't think that killing a season is the extent of which the line should be drawn. So look, if all clubs, if the players union went to the league for this negotiation and said all under 23 players for this, not every tournament, but for the Asian Cup or the World Cup or whatever, right? They have to be released. I think that's a very fair ask. But I also think it is very valid to allow clubs to decide what they want to do. Because we talk a lot at the moment in this era of the A-League about individual development. But I really want to see the clubs developing as clubs, doing what is best for clubs and getting fans on board with clubs. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
We talk about youngsters in terms of and this is not necessarily bad things, but we talk about youngsters in terms of when they can get a move away, not in terms of, how they can develop in 3 years' time and win a championship for their club. And so when I see a Melbourne City deny Max Caputo a call-up, I'm thinking, you know what? I actually think that shows a little bit of ambition. Obviously, you were denying an opportunity for a player to play on the world stage, and I have empathy for that point of view as well. But Melbourne City want to win the league. They want to get their form up. They want to enter into the final 2 games of the ACL Elite with their starting striker playing regularly in their system and getting that form built up. And they want to go be successful in that competition. And I think the other element at play here is the fact that it's under 23s. I understand it's the
Yeah.
Olympic squad and there's some prestige around that, but in worldwide football outside of the Olympics, under 23s really isn't held as that valuable an age group. As soon as you kind of get above the under 20, under 21s, where like a lot of your core kind of next gen players are coming through. Obviously, the best players in that age group are already playing first team football as well. But the under 23s just feels like that extra bit of step. Like
it's more like it's almost
all
kind of like a seniors reserves side in a way, is at least how people view it, right? Where it's like by that kind of point, they're either starting to make that step into the senior setup or they're kind of not, right? And it's like
if you're
like
22, 23 and you're not playing first team football yet, like there's issues there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. Like, you know, giving the clubs the ability to, like, I don't hate that. That's why I'm saying, like, I don't hate it. I just think clubs should just be united in the way they're approaching this, and that's where I'm a little bit annoyed.
You can't say they all deny though, because like you can't go to that side of it and say they all deny clubs because then no one would play.
I guess I don't know. Maybe it's just the selfishness from the Adelaide perspective of, you know, being like, well, that's three.
And then this goes back to the club
impactful.
deciding what they want to do. Adelaide want to be known as the club that develops those talents because they want to be able to say in 5 years' time to the, you know, if there's more competition in Adelaide for academies or whatever, they want to be able to point at their previous record and say, we are the club that allows you to go to these tournaments.
To do that,
then, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But if a Melbourne City wants to say, no, we want to hold our best players and win, I think that's also a valid option.
Yeah, that's an interesting viewpoint, to be fair. Yeah, like it reflects kind of the ambition of each club. But I suppose that's why it's been so divisive, right? Is that, that partisanship of supporters of each club going, hang on, what does this mean about my club's intent for this season now? If they're letting these impactful players leave or they're not letting them leave and they're keeping them around, especially, you know, in the case of the Wanderers, you think, what are you really playing for? This season's done and dusted basically now. You're just not getting results. You're not playing good football. It doesn't matter. Should be letting your players go. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting discussion point. It's not, like you said, it's not something that's really brought up anywhere else in the world because the makeup of squads elsewhere in the world is not so heavily skewed towards under 23 players as well. That's the thing where, you know, you think for us as Arsenal fans, right, under 23 England squad's announced, half the, you know, team is Arsenal players. You've never heard of a single one of them because they've not played for the senior team, you know, ever. True. It's like it's not as impactful for those clubs to let their players go, whereas it is here because those players play a more important role in their actual club team setup. So that's kind of the interesting point as well, where it's like these players now are having more and more impact on their club's domestic success, and that's why it's actually making that decision to let them go much more difficult for clubs.
And that European angle as well also comes from a place where like clubs are so much more ingrained in culture than where we are here. Like, you know, everyone here is a fan of Australian football and, you know, you want your national teams to succeed. But when you have the history of like English football clubs that are just so ingrained in the towns, in the culture, in, you know, the history of the location and the way of life, it's a bit different because the club is raised to such a high point where, you know, yeah, of course we want our young guns playing for us on the weekend, you know, and the whole shop window ideal, well, they're getting in a shop window here anyway. So, yeah. It's fascinating. Look, we're going to cover the tournament. I think games start in a little over a week. I think maybe the 8th of January would be the first game. So obviously want them to succeed. Is this World Cup qualifying as well? I have to imagine it would be.
Tell you.
We'll have to get Matt on and walk us through how that works because the 23 World Cup, the 20s, the 17s or something every year now, which is crazy, but who knows? FIFA are doing stuff all the time with these competitions. It gets a little bit hard to keep track of. But I think, Jacob, that'll do for this episode of the Roundball Australia podcast. Thank you very much for joining me on New Year's Day, 2026, off to a good start.
Yeah, it's been good. Some good games of football. Hopefully it all continues. And yeah, we just keep rolling into 2026 and, you know, bigger and better year for everything in the sport.
100%. Massive year. Thank you all very much for listening at home as well. This kind of first episode of the new year is usually the one where the numbers get back to kind of full strength. Everyone's had their Christmas. Maybe you're still kicking on from New Year's Eve. Who knows? But
like
back
Christian.
in the train. Christian was a late withdrawal from this podcast today. He said, my head's hurting a little bit. Can I have the day off? So it's just me and Jacob here. But hope you all enjoyed your New Year's Eve. Hope you all partied responsibly. Big year for football. Enjoy your football this weekend. I think we have a game like every day until Tuesday next week or something. So plenty of A-League to keep you entertained. Enjoy that. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.